sent you the questions, and I can already see that you've done some preparation, that you're all ready to go, and that you have the data that we're going to use to discuss the students today. So to be honest with you, Virginia, a lot of this I want to be you kind of talking and sharing what are the things that you've discovered, and try to discover different ways that I can be of support to you, and we can be supportive of you as a district and as a school. So Virginia, what is it that you found as you took a look at your data? What did you learn from your analysis of the assessment data from last year?
So in looking at the actual Gainer Sticker Slider, and this is actually a lot of information all at once that was very useful and was helpful for me to actually see the correlation between CASP and LPAC and attendance and STAR and some demographic data, whether students have been retained, what is their primary language. The actual thing about this spreadsheet is that I could actually filter them out and really study those 6.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I have 80% of my students that did not meet or exceed standards, and which is equivalent to 24 students that are in levels 1 or 2, and I actually had 18 students that remained at level 1 or regressed to level 1. So, you know, as I was looking at this, my heart dropped because I only really moved 4 students. In terms of levels, but with some of the skill scores, I actually moved them closer to that. So in looking at this, I kind of want to see, okay, well, what are my strengths, or what were the, you know, of my class in terms of the claim, because what's difficult with the SBAC is ELA is so broad, so at least the claim gives me a little bit more of different areas in terms of the reading, writing, listening, and research inquiry. And so I was hoping that I would get a little bit, I guess, more bright spots in that, but I'm kind of seeing that all my areas were actually 7%, which I think 7% is really only 2 students and that were actually above standard. I did see that my listening was, or actually it was my listening was a bright spot, but I'm seeing that actually my reading was actually one of the, my claim that I actually had the most, my class had the most challenge with that, which I don't understand because, you know, my kids take the AR all the time and they have like the most words read for their grade level, so I'm not really understanding why they would do so poorly in the reading.
Yeah, that is a great question. Let's examine that as we're looking at it a little bit more closely.
Okay.
So you shared information about language arts. What about for math?
So for math, actually, I had 4 students that actually regressed, 23 that remained the same, that, you know, they were stuck at the same level, and I had 0 that grew on that. But the other interesting thing that that I was looking at with this, in going back to the ELA, I'm sorry, because I had some STAR reading. It was really helpful to have the STAR reading on here. And so I did see the correlation of my students that were actually level 3s and level 4s in ELA. They actually had a skill score, a STAR skill score that were also level 3 and level 4. So there was a correlation there with that. So
you found that data to be pretty consistent. You was able to predict how they would do in the SBAC.
yeah, I mean, there were some anomalies, but, you know, I kind of, in reflecting on this, it kind of gives me some goals that I think I want to do with my class this year, is in really looking at those skill scores, because it is really a predictor on seeing and how can are my students moving forward, how far are they from that, and so forth. And also on this spreadsheet, I was able to see that I had 9 students that were ELs, and my ELs unfortunately did not do as well. Actually, 6 of them remained the same level, 2 of them regressed, and none of them grew on the actual on here.
How many did you say regressed?
2 of them.
So you shared some bright spots with me for language arts that you found. How about for math?
I really couldn't find any. Let's see, well, I'll be honest with this, is that I only, just for everybody's purposes, I only actually printed out ELA, so I didn't look at the math on there. The only math that I had was actually on looking at here, just for due to time, so, but I can make some stuff up.
Make it up. Yep.
Okay, so,
Well, even if you didn't see the data here that you wanted, you worked with the class all year.
Yeah.
What about your own observations and your own assessments? What did you think were areas of growth from your students from last year?
well, you know, and the SBAC really doesn't show any. It shows that my students actually remain the same at the same level, and I actually had 4 that regress. And I'm noticing that on my ELA, if my claim performance is, my reading was my challenge area, I do notice that a lot of the, I think somewhere where I could maybe focus on for next year is making sure that a lot of the math problems are reading, and so I need to, you know, make sure that I'm doing maybe something like maybe I know that my colleague, or I've heard another school, that a school uses that cube strategy, and so breaking apart the actual math problems, and that's maybe something that I could maybe look into as a goal for my this year's students. Because I know that I'm only looking at my students right now from looking back, but as I look at my this year's students, I'm seeing a lot of the same type of concerns in the math. There wasn't really
So what are
much
the
growth in
concerns
the
that you
math.
see now?
Well, let me go in here and look. I'm gonna make this up, okay. So, I'm also seeing that the incoming students, from the incoming students that I'm getting, and now I'm looking at my roster data for this year. It's one of the reports, but it's actually in ELA, and I'm gonna pretend it's math. Actually, over half of my students that I have incoming now have actually also regressed in their aspect. So I'm gonna have a lot of that same, I know they're different students, but I think if I'm looking at the claims, a lot of the challenges I think will be the same. And so I need to, I guess, learn from my practices from last year, what I did really well, because I think I do a lot of things well, but I also need to realize that I'm a learner and I can also improve more. So I'm noticing that in their ELA for this year, it's also writing is a challenge for my this year's class. So if it's writing and if it's reading, then I think it'll also apply with the math, meaning when it comes to the SBAC.
And so here might be an opportunity for us to talk about individual specific students that she has on her list and what it is that we would want to do to help to intervene for them. And I would also really want a lot more detail from her about what specific, I mean, yes, reading, but reading, right? I mean, what is it about the reading that we want to tackle, right? Yeah, what claims, what specific standards are we looking at? Yeah, writing. Well, what are you focusing on for writing for that particular student?
Well, and could you take the opportunity then to steer them, since she says she uses AR a lot, to steer them towards those STAR reports that indicate your whole class and what areas you should work on in your whole class? I don't remember what the name of that report is,
Yeah.
but you could help them figure out which report that is.
Right, and I think on that, with what you're saying, Katie, going along with that, with the STAR reading, on the correlations of the skill scores, I really don't think too many teachers really know that correlation and the power of that, and it's a predictor, you know, because most teachers only use it for like AR. And a lot
For
of
a
them.
CPD
or
or
for
grade
GE,
equivalent.
which, actually, if you look at the GE of my top students in this class, well, the 4 that grew, actually, there were levels 3 and 4. There actually, GE was also from a 6.5 to an 8, right? But they were very small, very minimal, you know? And so, that, and then the other thing that was also very forthtelling on this too, was that we have attendance here, and the students that were actually chronic absentee were 1 and remained 1 too, on that. Because they had either 20, 40 absences. And so maybe as a teacher, we sometimes might not emphasize on, you know, kind of encouraging them to come to school. Maybe even calling the parent, hey, I'm noticing that the student is out. You know, is there somehow I can support and stuff like that. So really connecting all of the different areas. So I think, once again, I know that this is it's much more powerful, like the gainer sticker at the beginning, but I think if you go over it just briefly, even just me doing it today, I was really kind of like reflecting. I put myself in this teacher's shoes. I wish I knew the students, but it was kind of like wow, this one made me really sad because this is a real class, you know?
The other thing I think that would go along with that is now we do have, in most cases, some universal slider data, some universal
Screener.
screener data. We can compare to see if this trend is still continuing. This is how they ended last year, where are they right now? And the attendance, I think, is huge as well, like you were mentioning. I was going to come and ask her about specific students if we saw a correlation between their attendance and how well that they did.
Yeah.
And
And it was,
yeah, and absolutely, there was,
Mhm.
no question.
there was too.
So in this section down here, and I know that we're running short on our time here, but in this next section, where there are the two columns, hey, that's just an opportunity. I know that when you're discussing this could be totally overwhelming for a teacher. And I don't want them to leave, I want them to feel some degree of urgency, but I don't want them to leave feeling like they were
Panicked.
crushed.
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Or panicked. So
Exactly.
maybe we're setting goals for two big things that you want to do to help move the students in your class.
With the
We can
group
keep
that you
refining with the group that we have.
With the group that you have.
That's right. So that's why there are two columns, right? One could be a math goal, one could be a language arts goal,
Yeah.
one could be an attendance goal, one could be a behavior goal, whatever it might be, because they can bring up other things that they're struggling with as well.
And then you might also have additional goals, like, something that will come out in January will actually be the beginning of December is gonna be the dashboard data.
Yeah, finally.
So that's gonna be coming out the week of November, the 9th and the 13th, and those are gonna be some additional.
November?
December.
Okay.
Additional talking points, also,
Yeah.
because then we will disaggregate that data like we did last year. We're gonna have to see where are your yellows, where are your reds, hopefully you won't see too many. I just actually looked at chronic absenteeism, I got a preview, so right now I'm crunching that data and looking at comparing from last year to this year, and, you know, overall as a district, we actually went down from a 9.8 to a 9.6, which is great, because in chronic absenteeism, you wanna go down,
Yeah.
you know, but might be some sites that might have gone up. So I think that's another thing that's really important, too. You know?
And definitely the schools that are doing the pilot at, screeners at any of the levels, you should include it as part of your conversation.
Yes.
Yes.
So this is a great starting point, but, if we're gonna really use the screener as a screener, we need to be having those conversations. So for next year, it'll be, you know, fall and spring, but eventually, if you do screener 3 times a year, you should be talking data 3 times a year. And so definitely print out the reports from, early
Star.
literacy
Yeah.
and, or
Star.
STAR and also math. And have those discussions so they get used to starting looking at that screener data.
And mid-year, I want to ask them if they see any discrepancies between what their current evaluation of the student is and what the STAR data says.
Yes.
Right? Because if I gave them an A, an E on the
Well.
report card, and then they are level 1, I would want to know what's going on.
Yeah,
Right?
well,
Well,
So-
I'm already having teachers who are concerned that the STAR math seems to be showing their children way more competent than they
yes,
are.
it's
Ah.
easier. The
They're
star
coming
math.
out with 6.9.
Yeah.
When you use any kind of
Right.
grade level equivalent for kids who are getting 1 this and
Yeah.
same math.
They might wanna check